What if I told you that there's an invisible line dividing America in half? A line that cuts straight down the middle of the most powerful country on Earth, separating two completely different worlds. On one side, the bustling cities and dense populations, and on the other, a vast, almost empty frontier where the lights grow dimmer and communities are few and far between. How did this strange straight border come to be? Join us as we uncover the hidden secrets of this mysterious line that shapes so much of America today. To understand this invisible boundary, we first need to recognize that it divides two very different realities on our planet. On one side, we have the familiar world, densely populated, filled with cities, towns, and bustling communities. It's the world most of us live in, where nearly everyone you've ever met or heard of exists. On the other side is the rural, underpopulated frontier, a vast stretch of land that seems almost untouched by human hands. While the majority of us live in the crowded half, the other half remains nearly empty, with only scattered islands of light and civilization. Interestingly, this line is clearly visible on population density maps of the United States, cutting almost vertically from south to north. It separates populated America to the east from the largely unpopulated west. If you zoom in, you'll notice that this line passes just west of major cities like San Antonio, Austin, Fort Worth, Oklahoma City, and all the way up to Winnipeg in Canada. These cities form the boundary of what is often referred to as the North American frontier. But why does this line exist here, seemingly in the middle of nowhere? If you switch to a satellite view of the United States at night, the reason becomes even more apparent. To the east of these cities, the map is lit up with a continuous glow of lights, stretching to the Atlantic Ocean. To the west, there's mostly darkness, with only a few scattered clusters of light. Driving across this line from the east to the west, you'll quickly notice the differences. The distances between towns and gas stations grow, and the landscape seems emptier, more desolate. This division roughly follows the 98th meridian of longitude, a nearly vertical line that slices the American population into two distinct halves. About 80% of all Americans, some 260 million people, live to the east of this line, while only 20%, or 1 in 5, live to the west. That's in an area that actually makes up most of America's land when you factor in Alaska. Strangely, this empty part of the United States includes California, the single most populous state, which is home to more people than the entire population of Canada. But even within California, most people live on the western edge, near the Pacific Ocean. If we draw another line from San Diego through to Portland and Seattle, we'll find that around 50 million Americans live in the narrow coastal plain between the ocean and the towering Cascade and Sierra Nevada mountains. Beyond this narrow strip, the vast American interior, a region nearly as large as the entire European Union, contains just about 30 million people, less than 10% of the entire US population. To put that into perspective, that's about the same number of people living in the greater New York City area alone. Moreover, the majority of these 30 million are clustered in just a few urban areas, like Phoenix, Denver, and Las Vegas. When you exclude these urban centers, the rest of the vast interior has fewer than 15 million people, comparable to the population of just Los Angeles and Orange counties in California. So what's going on here? Why does this vast stretch of America, nearly a third of the country, remain so empty? The answer lies in an observation made nearly 150 years ago by John Wesley Powell, an explorer and the second director of the U.S. Geological Survey. Powell noticed that as he moved from east to west, the variety of plant species decreased dramatically. He determined that this was due to a simple but crucial fact: it rained much less in the west than in the east. Powell drew a line marking the boundary between the wetter east and the drier west, which fell around the 100th meridian of longitude. Look at a modern map of annual rainfall in the United States, and you'll see that the 100th meridian does indeed mark a sharp division. As you move westward, rainfall drops dramatically. For example, Dallas, to the east of the line, receives about 38 inches of rain annually. Just to the west in Abilene, the figure drops to 26 inches, and further west in Midland, it's only 15 inches. This pattern repeats all the way north. Oklahoma City gets 33, 5 inches of rain, while Amarillo, just over the line, gets less than 20. Wichita, Kansas, receives 34 inches, while Dodge City, just west of it, gets 19. In short, it rains much less on the western side of the line, making it far harder to sustain human life and civilization. But what causes this stark contrast in rainfall? One of the main culprits is the Rocky Mountains. These towering peaks, which stretch over 3,000 miles from Canada to New Mexico, effectively block much of the moisture from the Pacific Ocean. This phenomenon, known as a rain shadow, means that the lands to the east of the Rockies receive much less rainfall. But it's not just the Rockies. The Cascade Range in the Pacific Northwest and the Sierra Nevada in California also act as barriers, trapping the rain on their western slopes and leaving the eastern interior dry. Because of these mountain ranges, the western interior of North America doesn't receive much moisture from the Pacific. The Appalachian Mountains in the east, by contrast, are much lower and don't block moisture from the Atlantic Ocean, allowing rain to reach deep into the continent. As a result, the eastern U.S. enjoys plentiful rainfall, enabling dense populations and large-scale agriculture. Meanwhile, in the west, fresh water is scarce, and farms often require complex irrigation systems to grow crops. As a result, farms are larger, less productive, and take up more space, which leads to lower population densities. Due to changes in the global climate, the line separating the wet and dry halves of North America has been shifting steadily eastward. In the past century, it has moved from the 100th meridian to the 98th, and it may continue to move further east in the coming years. This shift will have profound consequences for many of America's frontier cities, from San Antonio in the south to Fargo in the north. Meanwhile, much of the American West is already in the grips of a severe drought, the worst in thousands of years. The Colorado River, a crucial water source for about 40 million people in the West, is drying up. All of this brings us back to John Wesley Powell. He warned over a century ago that settling the American West would require careful planning and management of scarce water resources. He proposed dividing the West into regions based on watersheds, areas where all the water drains to a common outlet, rather than using political boundaries. But his warnings went largely ignored. Today, we are facing the consequences of that oversight. Subscribe to Truth, revealed to stay intrigued and informed.